11 days on, Russia's incursion into Russia has left a trail of complete devastation in the Kursk region. The Ukrainian forces have overrun one Russian settlement after another in the surprise operation that Kiev hopes will change the dynamic of the 2.5-year-long conflict. Russia's military has been struggling to mount an effective counteroffensive in the Kursk region, the largest on the country since the end of the Second World War. The Ukrainian forces have been pushing deeper into Russia for the second week. They've released more video footage that show the destruction of a strategically important bridge over the same river in the Kursk region. Now, the bridge was reportedly a logistical bottleneck that was used for delivering equipment to the front lines. Now, soon after the attack, Volodymyr Zelensky claimed that his forces have been strengthening their positions in the Kursk region. Now, Russia claims that Ukraine has used Western rockets, likely the American-made HIMARS, to destroy the bridge. It's also raised concerns over Ukraine's plan to attack Kursk's nuclear power plant. However, it still remains a big question if Ukraine will use the HIMARS to capture the nuclear plant. Remember, the United States has given Ukraine the freedom to use the Western rockets up to 65 miles inside the Russian territory. Meanwhile, a satellite image has emerged that shows a new bridge appearing over the river Siem in the Kursk region. However, it is unclear as to who installed the bridge and which has been seemingly erected in less than a span of a day since the attack by the Ukrainians on the other bridge. Sudzha, which is just 10 kilometers from the border, is the biggest town to have fallen into Ukrainian hands since the incursion began on the 6th of August. Artillery fire has blown chunks out of a statue of a Soviet founder, Vladimir Lenin, that stands in the central square of the Russian town. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claims that Sudzha is fully under his control. Russia, on the other hand, is claiming to be striking targets inside the Kursk region. The Russian Defense Ministry has released a video showing an Su-34 fighter jet carrying out airstrikes in the border region, and it claims to have repelled the Ukrainian forces near the town of Koronivo and several villages within the region. Russia has alleged Lancet drones have been destroying the Ukrainian armored vehicles in the Kursk region. Drone footage released by Russia's defense ministry purports to show Lancet kamikaze drones striking a Ukrainian armored vehicle in the Kursk region. And amidst the exchange of fire in the border region, Russia has also intensified its offensive in Ukraine. The Ukrainian authorities claim that 2 civilians have lost their lives after a Russian Iskander-K missile struck a residential and a shopping area in Sumy in northeastern Ukraine. And the strike destroyed more than 10 cars and damaged a shopping mall and also blew the windows out of several residences.
Я прокинувся тут, ночував в своїй студії, прокинувся від гучного вибуху, вилетіло двері, вікна, підхопився, тут горіли машини, взривалися.
Now, Kiev is claimed to have taken control of 82 settlements over an area of 1,150 square kilometers in the Kursk region since the 6th of August. The major counteroffensive into the Russian territory has sent more than 120,000 people fleeing the border region. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in the Kursk region and what is, of course, going to be the Russian response, we're being joined by Mr. Fred Weir, who's a journalist and a political commentator, and he's joining us live from Moscow. Now, Mr. Weir, this is a pretty critical moment in this war because the Ukrainians seem to be taking the battle inside the Russian territory. Tell us as to why Russia so far has failed in mounting an effective counteroffensive in Kursk.
Well, first of all, the border region was relatively undefended. The Ukrainians definitely achieved surprise. I mean, they worked up the whole operation in secret and sprung it. And that is an amazing success. I think they hope it will be a game changer. But really, the only thing that it has achieved so far is a massive PR victory for Kiev, a mood booster, They certainly put the Russians on the back foot and inflicted a psychological blow. But to keep it in perspective, the amount of territory they've taken is just a tiny sliver of Russia, and it contains no strategically important objectives. So the purposes of the incursion, first of course, to inflict a psychological blow, to show Russians what it feels like to be on the receiving end of an invasion. But I think the main goal was to divert Russian forces from the Donbass, other fronts, to make them come back and Russian territory. And in that, it has clearly failed. As you can tell by daily news reports, the Russians keep moving forward faster than ever in the Donbass. And the Russians appear to be trying to use local resources, National Guard forces, Federal Security Service forces, and perhaps that's why they're slow.
Right.
I mean, they seem to have blunted the Ukrainian advance. I mean, it's hard to tell in all those conflicting reports, and you recited some of them, exactly what's going on down there. We won't know for some time, but
it's difficult, in fact, to understand as to what is happening at this moment, because it's difficult to corroborate the claims and counterclaims that are being made as to what is happening in Kursk region. But something that even the Russian newspapers have been reporting is about the Kursk nuclear plant, where there are now reports that Ukraine potentially could even go on and capture it. And the Russian media is discussing as to what would happen in the aftermath of that. What is the realistic possibility about Ukraine being on the verge of capturing the Kursk nuclear plant?
Yes, it's still quite a distance off, and I think the Russians will be concentrating defenses around that plant because it is an incredibly important strategic objective. And indeed, anything that happened to it could be fatally dangerous for the entire region. So I think at this moment, that's an unlikely possibility. It might have been the original objective for the Ukrainians to move in very quickly and grab the Kursk plant, but in that doesn't seem to have happened. So, but that's one danger that's hanging there. Another thing that I think needs to be mentioned is that the Washington Post is reporting today that the Kursk incursion has derailed the talks that were underway to create a mutual deal between Ukraine and Russia to stop bombing each other's energy facilities, because the Ukrainians have destroyed about 15% of Russia's oil refining capacity with drone attacks and such, and the Russians have smashed much of Ukraine's electrical power grid. It is not a militarily useful thing to do, to destroy that civilian infrastructure. And they were apparently on the cusp of an agreement or talks to shape this agreement, and the Kursk incursion has blown that off the table. So that's a tragedy right there.
It's interesting that you mentioned it, but this is something that we'll be watching out very, very closely for. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Fred Weir, for joining us and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.